Citizens have the inalienable right to benefit from the results of their own honest labor. That's a good one. Yes, that's a conservative truism. You know, why? Well, it isn't because you're good-hearted and you want them to have money. It's because they'll work if you let them benefit from the work, and you want them to work because if they work, then they do things that you need. It's as simple as that. It's self-interest, and it's the right kind of self-interest. So if you work hard, it's like, great, have your money. You know, and you hear people all the time talking about how corrupt our society is and how the 1%, you know, occupies this pinnacle position. You know, the 1% turns over pretty damn fast, just so you know it. So you have about a 10% chance of spending at least 1 year in the top 1% chance during your life. I think that's right. I think it's 10%. It might be higher than that. But it's fast. The 1% is stable as a phenomena, but it turns over very rapidly in terms of who occupies it. And it's the same in every society. The wealth is always distributed inequitably. It's a natural law. You can look it up. It was discovered by a guy named Wilfred Pareto back in the late 1800s. Goods tend to distribute themselves inequitably. It can be a problem, but it doesn't mean that there's something fundamentally corrupt about the social structure that's driving it in that direction. And like, you don't want some filthy rich geniuses lying around? Like, maybe you do. I mean, look at what Elon Musk is doing, for God's sake. Maybe he should have 10 times as much money as he has. He's going to launch a rocket every 5 days to Mars in the next 10 years, right? He wants to wipe out fossil fuel cars, and he might do it. He wants to revolutionize the transportation system, and he might do it. He wants to put us on the damn solar grid with his new batteries, and he might do it. It's like, oh no, he has a couple of $1 billion. Well, God only knows what he's going to produce with that. It's like, so obviously there's going to be some corrupt rich plutocrats who do nothing but smoke cigars and snort cocaine. They're not going to live very long anyways. But there's lots of people out there who have the money they have because they would really like to do interesting and creative things with it, not because they're interested in gathering more, you know, paper money to stuff in their mattress and to feel the smooth delight of gold coins between their fingers before they go to bed. Like, what kind of attitude is that towards people who've made their fortune? You know, you think that about Steve Jobs? You think that about Bill Gates? I mean, good God, I don't know how, those people made a lot of money, but man, thank God they were around, you know? They've given us some tools that are just absolutely unbelievable. So, you know, maybe we could leave the jealousy of the successful behind for a while and notice now and then that some of the people who got to where they are actually deserve to get to where they are, and we should be thankful that they exist. That would be nice, a little gratitude, and that's a good conservative value too. It is more noble to teach young people about responsibilities than about rights. That's a good conservative message. It's like you have a son, you know, or you have a daughter, and you say, bloody well, grow up, stand on your own 2 feet, make something of yourself, right? So that I can be proud of you when you come over, and so that maybe you're useful in a crisis. It's like, pick up your damn load and shoulder it and do something useful and forget about your damn rights for a while. You can think about what it is that you should be doing to benefit yourself and your family and society, and you'll find some purpose in your life because of that. And so, well, that's a counterposition to the perpetrators of the endless rights buffet, right? Well, as long as we give you enough rights, you're going to be what? Free? You're going to be happy? It's like, yeah, sure. You'll drown in a sea of chaos. And that's what's happening to people now too. So, and that's why young people are so hungry to have someone talk to them about responsibilities. Here's another one. Radical change should be viewed with suspicion, particularly in a time of radical change. Okay, there's never been a time in the history of the world where things are changing as fast as they are now. And not only are they changing fast, the rate at which they're changing is increasing. Like, we're moving fast forward at such a rate that it's unbelievable. You can't even keep up. I don't care what discipline you're in. It's like, it's not so bad to have some people putting their feet in the ground, they're digging their heels in and say, look, we got a lot to swallow already. We got a lot to chew on and digest. Let's not muck about with everything that's worked so far. What has worked? It's not such a bad idea for people to have long-term families, right? We could say, let's try to support the family. We could even say, let's try to support the traditional family. Why? Well, maybe boys and girls need role models of each sex. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it is possible. It's certainly the case too that intact two-parent families have children that thrive more than broken families. And broken families are a catastrophe for everyone. Now you might say, well, I shouldn't stay with someone that I don't get along with. And it's like, yeah, fair enough, except that there's no one that you're ever going to find to stay with that you're going to get along with all of the time, especially in your shoddy condition. And so you're lucky that anybody will put up with you for a week, much less your whole life. It's like the point of marriage is to tough it out. And you don't tough it out for your happiness. That's not what you're in there for. You tough it out so that you have someone to tie the rope of your life together with it. You have a chance to tie the rope of your life together with the rope of someone else's life, and to make it strong, and to make a place that children can have some security and some encouragement, and thereby contribute to the future and pay for the miracle of your birth and your own raising. That's why you get married. And there's no reason that conservatives can't stand up and say, look, we're willing to tolerate alternative family arrangements, but when you start making the claim that the traditional family unit is just another construct and that it's not something fundamental to our polity, it's like you've taken your damn argument too far. First of all, you have no evidence whatsoever for that claim, and there's plenty of counter evidence. So one of the things the postmodernists basically say is, every time you stand up for something, you're also standing against something. It's like, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't stand up for things. And I think if there is something that conservatives could agree on that we could stand up for, it's the nuclear family. Now exactly how that's going to play out, I don't exactly know, but it's not anything to be ashamed of to say, well, it kind of looks like that structure's worked quite well for the entire duration of mankind, and so maybe we mess with it at our peril. Here's another one. The government, local and distant, should leave people to their own devices as much as possible. Why? Well, part of it's just humility. It's like, I'd rather that there was 1 million of you out there making your own stupid mistakes so that maybe 1,000 of you can get it right, than for one of you to impose their view on everyone and risk getting it catastrophically wrong for everyone at the same time. And that's really the alternative. Like, if you're a social scientist, like I mean an actual scientist, I don't mean a bloody ideologue, one of the things that you learn very rapidly is, you do a simple experiment, you think you're going to predict some element of human behavior. So here's my hypothesis, I'm going to put people in this experimental situation, and this is what they're going to do. And then you run the experiment, and they don't do that. They do something completely different. You find out that even though what you have them do is really simple, you don't have a clue what they're up to. And that's just a tiny little controlled experiment about one little tiny thing, and you're wrong. It's like, one of the great advantages to conservative philosophy is that it's humble. It's humble from the perspective of social experimentation. It's not like everything's great and we should just continue going the way we're going. It's like, well, everything isn't as broken as it might be, and I'm kind of stupid and blind, and all I have is a bat, and probably hitting it isn't going to make it any better. All I'll do is shatter it. And so the conservative says, it's working. Be quiet. Sneak away. Maybe it'll keep working. And that's a perfectly reasonable perspective. Now obviously sometimes things have to change, but the conservative can come up and say, don't be thinking that you have so much evidence that what you're doing is right, or that it will have the outcome that you expected. I'll tell you a quick story. This was told to me by a woman named Joan McCord, who was one of the world's first female criminologists, by the way, a PhD from Temple University, a genius level person. Tremendous integrity, tough person. She did a study in a place called Somerville in the United States, in Massachusetts, in the 1930s. Famous study. And so here was the deal. They'd identified a bunch of inner city kids in rough neighborhoods and felt, that they were more likely to be on a criminal track. Criminal, antisocial, undereducated, alcohol, the whole dismal, wretched underclass phenomena thing was going on. And so they thought, well, let's do an intervention. Let's set up programs to help these kids and see if we can change their developmental pathway. So they designed a fine study, man. I had the kids, I'll get the details wrong, but I got the story right. They had the kids, they made them more literate, they educated them more. They had their parents take training courses. They did social skills training. Like, they did all sorts of things to try to make the kids' lives turn out better. And to top it all off, because the kids were stuck in the inner city, they took them all out to summer camp for a couple of weeks a year. And so they could get away from the city and, you know, enjoy the countryside and have a little bit of a vacation, a little taste of a higher quality life. Yeah, so great. Everyone's thrilled with the damn program. The kids are having a great time at camp. The counselors are thrilled. The psychologists, they think they're doing a wonderful job. Great, it's working beautifully. Except, then they did the data analysis. Guess what happened? The kids in the treatment group, there was a control group, right, that didn't get all this special treatment, randomly assigned. It was a very nice experiment. The kids in the treatment group did worse on virtually everything that was measured. Worse. Why? Don't put antisocial kids together in the same camp for 2 weeks during the year. Right, because what happens is that the bad kids teach the slightly less bad kids to be worse. It's a well-documented phenomena. That's why what happens in prisons happens in prisons. What we do with criminals is the worst thing you could possibly do to criminals if you don't want them to continue to be criminals, except for the fact that you keep them in there till they're old enough, generally speaking, so they're less likely to engage in criminal activity. But what was learned from the Somerville study was, don't be so sure your good intentions are going to produce the results that you intend, because they probably won't, and they probably won't for reasons that you never even imagined. And the other one was, don't group bad kids with good kids on the assumption that the good kids will make the bad kids better, because that isn't what happens. What happens is the reverse. If you put 2 or 3 bad kids with a bunch of good kids, then the good kids get worse. The bad kids don't get better. Very well documented social science finding. Well, the reason I'm telling you the Somerville story is because, God, who could argue with that study, right? It's like, these kids were poor, they were struggling. It's like you want to lift them up, you want to make their life better. You do this wonderful, expensive, well-motivated experiment, and then you run the damn data analysis and you find out that there was one thing wrong with your social intervention philosophy that you didn't understand, and you actually made it worse. Well, and so Joan McCord, she spent much of the rest of her life going around telling social scientists, when you run a social experiment, politicians, the same thing. When you run a social experiment, especially on a large number of people, especially without their consent, then gather the data and do the follow-up study. Because it's highly probable that you'll find that what you did didn't work, or maybe it even worked backwards. And you'll never know that unless you do the study. And so what people took away from that, the social interventionist types took away from that was, whatever you do with your social intervention policy, don't run the study. Right. That was the wrong lesson, by the way.